Good morning, everyone. We are going to get started here in about another 30 seconds. All right, we are at the top of the hour, so we are going to get started. Welcome, everyone, to our webinar on departmental duties. Our presenter is Marty Roberts. Just as a reminder, chat is disabled. If you have any questions, please put those questions into the Q&A. All polls are going to be done within Zoom today. We're going to have some questions right at the very beginning. So in just a moment, I'm going to hand it over to Marty, but let's get those poll questions out of the way. Let's see who is on today. So the first one that we are going to go for is I work for. Give everybody a few more seconds. All right, so Marty, it looks like we are across the board. We have town, county, city, village, no tribal, and some private. All right, let me go back. Next question. My job is administration, highway super, engineer, field crew, board member, or none of the above. If you have none of the above, go ahead and put that into the Q&A. Give it a few more seconds, let everybody post. So we do have a bunch of engineers, highway supers, some administration, some field crew, and that. And last question. The years in your current position. Less than a month, less than a year, 1 to 2, 3 to 5. And it looks like we are across the board on that one too. It's pretty much evenly distributed. All right. So now that we have those out of the way, I'm going to hand it over to Marty. Marty, have a great webinar.
Thanks so much, Jody. So I want to welcome everybody to Highway Work 26. Hope everyone had a good New Year's. Welcome to the new year. Hopefully the weather has been not horrible for you. Let's see, why am I not getting this to work? I can't get my slide to work.
What's going on, Marty?
I can't get my slide to advance. Let's see.
Hold on 1 second.
Like if you scroll back down or bring your arrow down to the bottom, those little arrows on the left.
Okay. All
Yep.
right. All
Try
right. Here we
clicking.
go.
Yeah, there you
Here
go.
we go. I got it. So, just so that a little background on myself, I spent 38 and a half years with the town of Reading. I spent the last 15 years as the highway superintendent. I retired in 2015. I spent 11 years on the New York State Association of Town Superintendents uh, Highway Committee, and I was the president in 2014-15. I worked for the Cornell Local Roads Program since 2016. I teach running your highway departments. I teach reducing liability, and I teach rights and responsibility. I do workshops all across the state. In fact, I'll point some out that we're going to do again this spring. The reducing liabilities was a new rewrite a couple years ago. Rights and responsibilities was the former powers and duties of the Office of the Highway Superintendent. I would, if you guys haven't taken these, I would encourage you to try to get these to just get your feet under you. The job you do, the position you have is there's a lot of responsibility that goes with it, and I want to make sure that if I can assist you in performing those duties um, easier with less pitfalls, I would certainly like to be able to help you do that. So department responsibilities, we'll talk about the things that you're responsible for. There's a multitude of things that you're responsible for. Now, there's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of liability that goes with what you do. Obviously, you're responsible for road and street construction and maintenance. Some departments may have other duties as well. I see there are a number of villages that we're on today. You have water and sewer, cemeteries, parks, vegetation management, maybe with herbicides, traffic signals. Some departments are even responsible for navigational aids along New York's Atlantic coast. There's a lot. I mean, I've walked in your shoes. I kind of know what it's about. And hopefully maybe some of the things we discussed today will help you get through it a little easier. We'll go back the other way. So first and foremost, records, highway, right of way, you're responsible for notice, you're responsible for payrolls and vouchers, restricting and closing roads, liability and risk. You're also responsible for a number of annual reports. You'll notice that records is number one on the list, and I would encourage you if you're keeping good records or you have kept good records, attaboy. It's probably one of the most important things that you're responsible for. It aids in if you have to defend yourself in a litigation, it's good it's a budgeting tool. It'll aid in planning. At a bare minimum, you should be keeping daily records, including the weather, road conditions, employee attendance, work performed, vehicle crashes within your jurisdiction. A full rundown of record retention periods for individual records can be found in the New York State Archives Retention and Disposition Guide. Remember, some records are permanent. You can never get rid of them. Remember, anything you write down is a foilable record. So keep that in mind as well. If you're new to the superintendent's office, especially if you're a town, you're responsible for the first 90 days. If you're in the New York State retirement system, you have to log what you do for those first 90 days. This is an effort to make sure that people are they instituted this a few years ago so that people that were actually working were actually doing full-time jobs and were accountable to the retirement system. You do that for the first 90 days as a town guy, and then in subsequent years, all you have to reconfirm that what you do is essentially the same that you did in years past. You're working a full-time position. You're going to want to appoint or reappoint your deputy highway superintendent if you're a town guy. Make sure that you have a deputy. You need somebody to work in your behalf if you're not there. And make sure your 284 agreement is completed before any highway monies, is spent on highway projects. And keep in mind that you can't hire anyone unless you have a 284 agreement in place. 284 agreements can be amended with board approval at any time, but before you can spend a dime on highway work, you have to have a signed 284 agreement in place. And I know there's a lot of people that had questions about this in the past, and if you have questions, you can reach out. We'll be more than happy to explain it. Or my running your highway department, we go into much detail. You're responsible for highway right-of-way, anything within the right-of-way. You manage all the aspects of the right-of-way, drainage, culverts and bridges, ditches, storm sewers, road surfaces, potholes, traffic markings, signage. Signage probably should be closer to the top. Signage is the number one litigated thing in tort liability. Um, Keep that in mind. Make sure your signs are up to date and are pertinent. Pertinent. Make sure that they're, the retroactivity is what it should be. It's an easy way for towns to lose tort liability lawsuits if the signage isn't correct. And as I travel the state, there's a lot of it that really needs to be corrected. You're responsible for hazards, trees, fixed objects, utilities, snow and ice. As I travel the state, I can tell you right now, trees, there are a number, especially with the demise of the ash trees in New York State. There's a lot of trees that really should be removed from the system that are adjacent to the traveling highway, they're a hazard to the traveling public. Um, and when you see these things, we're going to talk about notice next, but when you see these things and you don't do anything about them, and it's pretty clear that they could fall in the road, you're going to have some liability. And notice, prior notice, written notice of a defect. Towns, counties, villages, counties can get some uh, deflection from written notice, especially for snow and ice. Towns, you may want to make sure that you have, the caveat, the additional protection by passing the required local law for complete protection. Villages get it without having to pass the local law. And remember that there's actual written notice. This can be in the form of a letter sent to you or to the town uh, clerk. It can be an email sent to you or a town clerk, or maybe to a board member. Make sure that when you get actual written notice, that you devise a plan as to how you're going to act. And that written notice has to be kept by the town clerk in a special file. And you're going to want to make sure that whatever action you take to correct that defect is kept in that file as well. Constructive notice, we talked about that a little bit. If you see something for long enough that you really should have taken some kind of action against it, maybe it's a pothole right next to the road rolling into your highway garage. Or maybe it's a tree that pieces have fallen off in the road and you still haven't done anything about it. Or maybe it's a defective sign that if you can't see it, what makes you think that other people can see it as well? Maybe foliage is grown in front of it. These are the kind of things that you have to pay close attention to, especially when it comes to constructive notice. And then the other thing is law enforcement. If law enforcement notifies you of a defect, you have no choice but to act in it in a very timely fashion because trust me, they are keeping records. All of that stuff is documented through the sheriff's department or the state police. And if you don't do something about it and there's some sort of a crash that occurs because of it, the municipality is going to be on the hook. Payrolls and vouchers. You're responsible for employee time and time off records. You may have a payroll clerk that assists you with that, but you're the one that has to sign off on it. The same as vouchers. Your town, you have to sign off on all vouchers to make sure that the monies that have been submitted for payment, the municipality has actually received those goods or services, and that you're saying what they've asked for, they are entitled to. You're responsible for bids. If you're looking for equipment, if you're looking for materials, um, unless you're buying off of a contract, an existing contract, or you're piggybacking off of someone else's bid, you're responsible for, the writing of those bids, construction of those bids. Make sure that you understand what your procurement policy is. At what point do I have to bid? At what point do I have to get quotes? Make sure you know your procurement policy. If you're not aware of it, you might want to ask the clerk for your procurement policy. I've been to places in the state where they aren't hardly allowed to spend a dime without getting authorization from the boards. I don't know how you do that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I was in a place in the North Country, and apparently somebody had abused their ability to to procure goods and services, and they couldn't spend $5 without getting board approval. You couldn't buy a windshield wiper in a snowstorm if you didn't have authorization. Make sure you know what your procurement policy is. And I would and I also would encourage you to make sure that you keep very accurate very accurate employee um, records. Make sure that you keep track of that, because if there's ever a dispute or a question as far as when they get towards the end of their service career, employees time off and that sort of thing, make sure that all of that stuff is well documented, because there have been instances in the past where people really didn't get their full service credit because there wasn't they couldn't dispute what was what had been documented. Restricting and closing roads. There's temporary closing of roads or restricting the roads due to construction. Town and county superintendents can only do that. Um, Long-term construction or long-term closures of roads have to be done by the chairman of the legislature, by the supervisor of the town. Villages by that closure can be done by the mayor and the board of trustees. Know your responsibility. Most people, I've talked to people saying, "No, I can close roads." Well, no, you can't. Not legally, you can't. We had to do a number of them in the town of Reading during major flooding events. And the first thing I did is got a hold of our supervisor and said, "Look, we've got this road, these roads, these 7 roads that have to be closed immediately." And he says, "Well, I'll take care of that." Get a hold of the sheriff's department and give them notice that those roads are going to be closed indefinitely, and that we will notify you when they're open to travel again. Make sure that you get your detours in place. Make sure that you notify all the appropriate people, emergency management. So if they need to have an ambulance go to a residence on that road, make sure that the schools are notified so that buses can't travel. And make sure you notify the residents. Notify them what you're going to do to be able to get them to their residences. I mean, it's in the event of a natural disaster like that, you really want to make sure you know your responsibilities and the chain of command when it comes to that. Liability and risk. It's impossible to remove all liability. It's mostly about uh, trying to manage whatever risk there is. This includes equipment. Make sure your equipment is properly maintained, safe and responsible method. Make sure that when you're doing that maintenance, that all of that stuff is documented. We talked about records. If you're doing repairs or maintenance on equipment, make sure that is all documented. So in the event of a crash, if that should happen, that the brakes have been adjusted and when they were adjusted and how many miles were on the equipment, and all of those things should be absolutely documented. Some say, well, that they do it as it needs it. Well, yeah, when they do it as it needs it, make sure that it's documented. And you really should probably have a plan in place as to how often that stuff is going to be, looked at. I know a lot of them have automatic brake adjusters now, but that's just one part of it. People have to have eyes on things to make sure that they're operating correctly. Make sure your employees, make sure they understand their liability, the things that they do, how it affects the liability for the municipality. Your right of way. We talked about this. Make sure that you're traveling your roads, and when you're keeping records, say, well, I traveled the north end of our municipality this week and on Monday. And then on Wednesday, we travel the south end of our municipality. Um, Make sure that if you're not doing it, you have someone that's traveling those roads and you're documenting the fact that what they found. And if they didn't find anything, you should document that as well. Say, we traveled the roads today, I didn't find any defects, or if I did find a defect, but keep in mind when you write down something that you found, it's a foilable. It's foilable, and you want to make sure that you also document what you did to eliminate that defect, or to at least temporarily, um, what your temporary course of action would be. And public interactions, and this is something that I encourage, in my trainings, make sure you're aware of how you act to the public and how your employees act to the public. It's it's a different world we live in now. Everything is recorded as all you have to do is watch the news one night and everybody has, they have Ring cameras that record, they have cameras on their phone. This is something that as time goes on, you're going to have to be more and more aware of how you act to the general public. I mean, I'm not sure that everybody is out to win a lawsuit, but I'm telling you that you have to assume that everything that you do is being recorded anymore. So make sure your people are aware of that. Train your people your employees to be respectful and to work safely. Safety should be something that you should be training your people all the time. And when you train them, you give them safety training, make sure you document that. I mean, when Pest shows up to your facility, they're going to want to see your safety training. How much safety training did you do? What did you do? Who attended it? All of those things are going to be on the list of questions they're going to ask you when they show up to your facility. Annual requirements and reports. Your town, and counties as well. State contracts, fuel, salt. I hope everybody's got all the salt they need. They keep talking about salt shortages. I know the local private contractors around here are kind of at the mercy of what's available at this point. And now my nephew does maintenance, snow and ice maintenance, and a number of big contracts. And now they're talking about getting salt out of Albany, that's coming from other countries, and the price of salt is doubled. So I hope that all the municipalities have got what they need. And, you get a tough year like this, especially in like Syracuse and Buffalo, where I don't know so much about Buffalo, but Syracuse has gotten far more than their share this year. And I hope that everybody's got all the salt that they need. Road mileage and chips. You're responsible for that to make sure that you're going to get reimbursement for work that you do. You're going to have to fill those out, those chips forms, your road mileage. Bridge and large diameter culvert inspections twice a year, spring and fall. Make sure you do, and make sure that you document those, right? If it's a bridge thing, you have to have an official bridge inspection. Make sure that they're done in a timely fashion. Sign inspections, semi-annual, spring and fall. Make sure you do. Make sure you document that. Make sure that people that do those inspections are signing off on them. We used to sign off on the back of the sign so that it was, there was and whenever there's a sign that's replaced, make sure that, it's replaced with the appropriate sign, and document the day that it was installed. Remember, your south-facing signs only last a portion of the time that a north-facing sign would. Make sure you keep an eye on the signage. Number one litigated thing, remember that. Machinery inventory, September, you're going to do it for towns are going to have to submit that by the 30th of September. You may have to submit it to the county. Some do, some don't. And our county used to like to have it so that they were, they had an inventory of what was available in the event of a disaster so that they know what there was. And they also used it as a budgeting tool when it came time to maybe go out to bid. Maybe they would get a better deal if they bid three trucks as opposed to one, or three payloaders or three front end loaders as opposed to one. Maybe do it as a group. I be aware of who wants to see those machinery inventory reports. Your SH 900, your pest sickness and accident report has to be done annually. It has to be displayed in a prominent area where people frequent, the break room, the lunchroom. If you're in an MS4 area, you have to make sure that those reports are filed with the state. For your villages, you have to clean catch basins and those sort of things. All that stuff has to be documented. Personnel policies. I would assume that everybody has a personnel policy. If you're new, and I see that a number of you guys are new, make sure your personnel policies are in place. If you have a labor union, you have a binding labor agreement. Your personnel policy can't be in conflict with that, but make sure that people understand what they are responsible for, what they are entitled to. Um, do you have do you have policies for cell phone use on the job, smoking in vehicles, drug and alcohol testing, time off, benefits? If Make sure that you know what your personnel policies are for the people, especially if you're new. And those are the kind of things that should be reviewed annually. And if they need to be updated, they should be by board. You and the board will go together and you'll update those and present those to the employees. Just make sure that they're not in conflict with a binding labor agreement. Equipment management. Purchase through bidding process, through piggybacking process, buying from another municipality. Machinery costs a lot of money. It's really expensive now. It's gotten more so in the last few years, and it's much more difficult to plan for equipment purchase than it once was, because 3 years ago or 5 years ago, you decided you're going to buy an excavator, and now the cost of the excavator is exponentially more than it was 5 years ago. It's hard to calculate what it is going to be hard to calculate what your when you're planning for equipment purchase, more now than it has been in the past. I do have, and when I do the running your highway department, I do have Excel spreadsheets that will help you with um, long-term planning for equipment, and long-term planning for roads, and long-term planning for signs. Um, they're available on the Cornell website. I have them that I'll forward to you. If that's what you would like me to do it, I can do that. My email is on the website, but they're available on the Cornell Local Roads website as well. Make sure you're doing your proper maintenance. My grandfather always said grease is cheaper than parts, and it's just as valid today as it ever was. Make sure you're doing the proper maintenance. Make sure that your people understand what it costs to buy that equipment, and that they're taking care of it as they should. Um, Make sure that you're aware of the requirements for disposal of surplus equipment, either by auction, by bid, or sale to other government municipal or government agencies. Um, Remember that even when you get ready to dispose of some of that equipment or surplus uh, materials, they have a value, and whatever is gained, whatever it's sold for, or whatever the value of it is, has to go back into the fund that it came from. So it would go back in. So if you're selling machinery, it has to go back into your machinery fund. Make sure that you're aware of that. If you dig out old corrugated metal pipes or cast iron pipes and you sell those at a scrap yard, make sure that those funds go back into the fund that they came from. Make sure, because if you're audited and all of a sudden they say, well, where's all the money from the scrap pipe? I mean, I've seen this happen. People get themselves into trouble. Make sure you're aware of it. That all of that stuff still belongs to the taxpayers. Premature failure. Why? Well, was it the wrong equipment? Did you have the wrong piece of equipment for the job? Maybe we're screening gravel and we have a 2.5 yard loader when we really should have a 4 yard loader to charge the screening plant. You're overworking the equipment. You're running it harder than you need to. Um, you're overworking it. Maybe you don't have a big enough excavator, or maybe the trucks you're using are not what you really need. Maybe the trucks are too tall for the excavator you're loading them with, and now they're banging the sides of the boxes. Make sure that you use the appropriate equipment for the task at hand. Lack of maintenance. We talked about it. Grease is cheaper than parts. Make sure people are maintaining as they should, and when they maintain it, make sure that they document that. Poor operation. I can't I can't state this enough. I can't encourage you enough to make sure you train your people well. Teach them how to run equipment. Put them in a situation where they really there's no stress involved with it. Maybe send them out with an excavator and have them work in a sand pile or a stone pile, moving it and getting used to the hydraulics. They're getting used to the controls to make sure that they're smooth. Don't send them somebody that has been there 2 weeks out with a new piece of equipment and have them start loading ditch cleanings into a 250, $270,000 truck, because those are the kind of things that you're just looking for trouble, and the price of equipment now, make sure your people understand, that they have to be better, operation, and it starts with you. Make sure your people are properly trained. Somebody said, well, if you train them, then, get them all smart, then they'll go somewhere else. Well, what if you don't train them and they stay there? I'm thinking smarter is better. And then there's age. Metal fatigue happens regardless of how shiny you keep it, how much you keep it out of the sun, how much maintenance you do. Metal fatigue is part of what it is. Sometimes they just wear out, and at that point, you just have to replace it. And then there's accidents. Accidents happen. We call them crashes, not really accidents, because most of this times it could be avoided. Um, this, for instance, is an accident that maybe could have been avoided. I can't remember. I think it was in an interstate in Kansas at 70 miles an hour with a chained down excavator on a lowboy. I can't even imagine what it's going to cost to repair that overpass. It's in the millions, I'm sure. Uh, Make sure you're aware of the department's insurance coverage. Make sure you know how much you're insured for. Something like that could be devastating. I mean, I don't know where, I guess you float a bond to cover whatever the extra costs are. Make sure you're aware. Budgeting. For towns, and counties, there are account codes, ledger codes, and object codes. The accounts, A is general. These are the kind of things that if you're really new to it, you really nice to have a bookkeeper or somebody that can help you when you're putting your vouchers through for payments. A is general. DA and DB are town highway. DB is if there's a village within the town. D and DM is county highway. D is highways. DM is machinery. Um, H is for capital projects. A 5010 is administration. If you're a highway superintendent, you get paid from this fund. 5020 is engineering. 5132 is buildings and garage. 3310 is signs. 5110 is general repair. 5112 is capital. 5120 is bridges. 5130 is equipment. 5140 brush and trees. 5142 snow and ice. And 5148 is other governments. Object codes, personnel is zero point 0.1, equipment is zero point 0.2, contractual materials and invoices is zero point 0.4, debt principal is zero point 0.6, debt interest 0.7, and employee benefits is 0.8. And each one of these codes can be subdivided as needed for specific projects and needs. Which ledger account would you think that would be if you're a town? If you said 3310 signs, you're absolutely right. Keep in mind that the supervisor is responsible for the funding for this. When it says A, this is the supervisor's. He's responsible for that. But make sure you know that your department may be responsible for the care and maintenance of those signs. Remember what I said, number one litigated thing, keep good records when it comes to signs. Which ledger account do you think this might be? It could be a DA 5110 as a repair, or it could be a DA 5120 as bridges. Just be consistent. If you're calling anything over 5 foot in diameter a bridge, make sure that you're consistent when you file these for reimbursement. Which ledger account do you think this is? Could be a 5110 as a repair. So it looks like a nice single surface street, but it could be a 5112 as a capital improvement. You can submit this for CHIPS reimbursement.
Marty,
Yes?
we have Michael Nowak that put into the Q&A sewers 8120. I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to let you know that that was in there.
Yes, could very well be. And he's a village guy, so yeah, make sure that you guys understand which codes you need to submit those under. Um, if you, I would assume that you have a bookkeeper that can assist you with that. And I'm going to tell you, when I first started, it was one of those things that I struggled with a bit because I had absolutely no interaction with the former superintendent, as far as those go. I made a cheat sheet. The ones that I used most often, I made a cheat sheet. It's on my desk. In fact, I was in talking to the superintendent the other day at the town of Reading, and lo and behold, there on his credenza was the same cheat sheet. So he's the second one past me, so they're still using the same cheat sheet that I used back in the day. Beware. Which ledger account do you think this might be? If you said A5132 buildings and grounds, you'd be correct. But keep this in mind when you're doing things that are outside of the realm of highway. Make sure that their care and maintenance of, like, the parks and cemeteries, water and sewer, that their employees' times and benefit is billed to the appropriate ledger account. This is an issue with villages, as all funds come from the general. But when it comes to the towns, if your guys are mowing the town hall, it needs to be billed to the correct thing. Or if you have water and sewer within a town, make sure that they're billing that to water and sewer. Make sure that it's billed to the appropriate fund. Because if not, at some point, um, and it tends to make it seem more reasonable for the people that are using the water and sewer. But at the end, everybody that doesn't get the benefit of water and sewer within the town is helping subsidize that for the people that do. Make sure that you're billing it to the right fund. I won't beat that horse, but make sure you're aware. Budget estimates. This is something that is a bit of a struggle. You villages are probably getting close to putting those budget estimates together right now, as you're working on a different um, schedule than the towns and the counties. I would encourage you, if you're a village guy, to be working on this, right now, for the next couple of months, because you're going to have to submit them pretty quickly. Zero-based budgeting. Um, Unless you're just a guru at numbers, this is probably out of the realm of most of us. Unless you're a Tim Hunt, this is a tough thing to do. Start every line item from zero and decide how much you're going to spend for the entire year on that out of that fund. Um, I use the historical average of what we used in the past, maybe the year before. You kind of look at how much winter you had and how much you spent and how much you think you're going to need for the coming year, or how much salt you used, or how many miles you're going to chip seal. We use those, what we've done in the past. You kind of look at what, the the price increase is going to be. I use the consumer price index. Somebody said, well, yeah, well, I use a cost of living. Well, cost of living for what we do in the highway industry really probably isn't as appropriate. The consumer price index is a multiplier when developing your budget. Life cycle planning for equipment and highway maintenance helps with this long-term budgeting. I do have Excel spreadsheets that can help you with that. I would encourage you to get them from the local roads program. They'd be more than happy to send you the spreadsheets for that. It does help. In my running your highway department classes, I show you how to operate those spreadsheets. It does make life a lot easier. There are, and it's not foolproof, because as the price escalation in equipment has gone up exponentially lately, it's a little tougher to use those. I mean, you can add inflation rates, you can change the inflation rates in the spreadsheet so that it maybe will help you, but I would encourage you to do that. Historical averaging, use the cost of living increase or a consumer price index. Life cycle planning. So the budget cycle. Talked about villages getting ready to start theirs. T minus 3 months. You want to make sure that you're you're getting your things around to get them to the budget department. Um, T minus 2 months. You're going to present your tentative budget to the budget officer, be the supervisor, be the mayor. T minus 1.5 months. You're going to have a public hearing. You present that tentative budget, and they're going to have a public hearing, and people are going to be able to voice their input as to whether they think it's good or it's not good. And then 1 month you're going to adopt the final budget. We always did it at our November meeting, usually right after election. We would present our final budget, and they would adopt it. And then T minus 0, you start your fiscal year. Villages are going to start yours at a different time, but towns and counties are going to start theirs January 1. Scheduling work. You need to determine the work needed. You're going to plan the activities. You're going to calculate costs, and you're going to implement the work. This is something that can be a bit of a struggle when you first start work. You want to make sure that your guys are busy, that they're getting done as much as they can, but you have to decide what they're going to do, sometimes long term. Sometimes it's tough day to day, but you want to think about things long term, especially when it comes to highway work, where maybe you need to haul materials, you need to maybe you have to have some engineering help. You're going to have to decide what it's going to cost to do it. And all these things are going to probably go into your 284 agreement, especially when it comes to capital things. You want to make sure that you have a plan and going to decide what it's going to cost you to do it and how you're going to go about doing it. What's the time frame? How long is it going to take? Whatever you do, Don't be like these knuckleheads here. They get this thing. This is like after 9/11 where they, all of a sudden we better get ballast in there so people can't drive into our building and destroy things. And then they get all done and somebody says, well, wait a minute, how are we going to get the truck out? Um, Make sure that um, if you don't have records from your predecessor detailing what needs to be done in previous years, then maybe your employees can help you, especially if you're really new to the department. Maybe you weren't a part of the department before you took the office. So scheduling work, you're going to plan, you're going to mobilize equipment, you're going to build it, you're going to clean up afterwards, and then you're going to evaluate what you've done, right? And when you're planning, this may include things like, you know, dig safe New York. You're going to do your 811 calls. You're going to make sure you have equipment in place. Your equipment's up and ready to go. You're going to make sure that you have the materials you need, whether it be the right size culvert or the right amount of fill material, or if you're putting in a culvert, or if you're going to chip seal, do we have enough trucks to do this? Are chipper bars all in place? Or, all of these things are part of the planning stage of it. You're going to get this equipment there as it needs to be. You're going to do the required work and make sure you're cleaning things up when you get done. If you're putting in a culvert, make sure that when you get done, you clean things up. You get the old culvert removed from the side of the road. You got things dressed up in. Make sure you seed the area down to prevent erosion. Or if you're ditching, make sure you seed the area. Make sure you clean up. And then you're going to evaluate as to what you did and if how could you have done it better? Could you have done it more streamlined? These are the kind of things that, after you do a project, make sure that you evaluate how you could have done it better. And I would encourage you to get input from your employees. They're the ones on the ground. I mean, unless you're there physically, during the whole process, and maybe you should make sure you take the time to discuss with your employees how you could have done it better as you're doing it. A typical process is you're going to have check your inventory, know the condition, the repairs that are required. You're going to need to prioritize sometimes, right? Is it more important? I don't know how you guys are deciding what roads or what repairs need to be made and on what streets or roads. It might be one of those things. We use traffic counts in the town to help. School bus routes made a difference. Um, and then implementation of whatever repairs you're going to do. Inventory, you should have an inventory of all your roads, and you do be through your chips, bridges, and culverts. Make sure you know what you have, how many you have, what they're made of. Signs. How many signs do you have? How many know? I mean, we were very fortunate that we had a girl from Soil and Water that was, she was just a guru. She GPS located our signs, our bridges and culverts. All of our facilities were and they were put on a map. And I could tell from my office what the culverts upstream and downstream of a location to install a new culvert were made of, what size they were. I didn't even have to go out and measure it because it was already there. And when they were put in place and what the materials they were made of. I can't thank her enough. And she moved us into another century. There are companies that will do this for you. I know there's some companies up north that do this kind of thing. I'm sure they are all over the state. It might be a good idea if you're not capable of doing it yourself. Maybe you look out to one of these companies to help you. Guide rail equipment. Make sure you know what your equipment is. You're going to do that, through your machinery report that you're doing that's due September 30th. And miscellaneous item. What other kind of things do you have? Right? Make sure you know. And the conditions of your roads. I know that Cornell offers a program where they have interns come out and evaluate your roads called camp, and you can pay them to come and determine the condition of your roads. I kind of use the coffee cup method. We Yeah, if you guys aren't familiar with that, that's you sit in your truck with a cup of hot coffee in your hand and you drive down the road. And if you got a nice smooth road, you can maybe even put your coffee in a cup holder. And then there's that one where maybe you need to pick the cup up so your hand acts like a gyro so that it doesn't, you can kind of move your hand to avoid the bumps and things of the road. And then there's the road that nobody's all that proud of, where you either finish your coffee or you throw it out the window because you know you're going to wear it. That's that road that we're not proud of. But know the condition of your roads. Make sure you document them and have a plan as to how you're going to address those repairs. Remember, don't do the worst first. Keep your good roads good, and then whatever money's left over, make sure you do your best to correct those ones that you threw your coffee out for. Purchasing, direct purchases. Those are the things where you go down to the CarQuest or the Napa and buy a windshield wiper or a fan belt. What's your threshold before you have to get oral quotes? And this oral quote thing, we're kind of past that at this point. I mean, with the digital world we live in, you can get a quote from Amazon or anybody online, to find out if you're getting the best deal. Um, but know what those are by your procurement policy. Maybe you have to have a written quote, and I would encourage you to use the internet if you need to, as opposed to calling all over town. You might be able to find a better deal. Um, and where do you have to go? What's your threshold before you have to go to bid? And there are some exceptions. Be aware of that. In the event of a disaster, a big crash where maybe you've taken out a piece of equipment or uh, you get a major weather event and it's destroyed roads and you need things right now, you can you can forego the bidding process. But I would encourage you, I mean, especially with the digital world we live in, almost anything you could, I mean, we had an event, and I'll talk about that in a bit, that almost anything you can get quotes fairly quickly, maybe even within, the same day if you're you know, rather than just to willy-nilly award contracts to whoever it might be. Remember, good specification provides clear and easy to understand information to the bidder to make sure that they get what they want at a reasonable price. Make sure you ask for what you want. Not actually not ask for what you want, but ask for what you need. I mean, and I would encourage you anytime you go to your municipality, you don't ask for things that you want, you ask for things that you need. And anytime you can include safety in those requests, it goes a long ways as to, your ability to get what you need. Snow and ice control. We're kind of right in the throngs of the snow and ice season, although looks like we may get a little break for a day or two. Uh, I would encourage you, if you don't have a written snow and ice policy, that you get one. There are a number of examples on the Cornell Local Roads website. You say, well, I don't really think we should have a written policy as to what our snow and ice control, what we're going to do, in case we don't do it. Well, if you're doing the same thing over and over and you consistently um, attack weather events in the same way, I would encourage you to write it down and tell people what they can expect from your department. Obviously, you need to have caveats in there in the event of equipment breakdown or employee, the fact that you don't have employees available for sickness or whatever it might be. We went through this during COVID when you couldn't get to have two people in a truck or you couldn't have people working in the building at the same time. They had to reduce the amount of maintenance. Um, have caveats on there in the event of extreme conditions. Maybe it's Maybe you're doing the same things over and over, but now we've got an ice storm, so things change. You're not going to be able to do what you did, for a normal snow event. Make sure that that's in your snow and ice policy. But if you don't have written snow and ice policy, there's going to be a judge and a jury somewhere that's going to decide what your snow and ice policy is. And they'll say, well, your roads are, supposed to be bare 24/7. Well, that's not what our policy is. Well, where does it say that? Yeah. You need to make sure you have this in place because somebody will take advantage of it. If it hasn't already, it will in time. This is a different world we live in. Um, we used we didn't reinvent the wheel. I asked the town of Orangetown, Jim Dean, if we could use his winter maintenance policy, and we amended it so that it fit the town of Reading. There are a number of them available on the Cornell Local Roads website, and I would encourage you to to make sure that you have one in place. Public interactions. We talked about this a little bit before. Your department will be looked on differently than if it was even 20 years ago. Be mindful of your interactions with the public and make sure that you train your employees how to act and react when dealing with the public. Sometimes people do things just to see what kind of a reaction they can get. Make sure you guys, if they have any kind of an issue with an interaction with the public, say, well, I really don't know. You probably need to talk to my boss. Kick the can, right? Tell them that they don't need to be making decisions like that when it comes to the public. Just kick the can up to you. That's what you do. You have their back. If you're a superintendent, you have their back. And you deal with it. And if you can't deal with it, then you can kick the can as well. Right? That's what public service is about. Kick the can. No, it isn't really, but make sure that you understand that sometimes these interactions are in place for a purpose. Just don't bite in, right? And you as well, as superintendents, make sure that you don't buy into, the kind of thing that may cause you trouble. Standard operating procedures. Make sure every task you provide for your municipalities, you should have a standard operating procedure for. Safety equipment to wear, what kind of equipment we're going to use, how we're going to use it. This was a picture taken at Cornell University a number of years ago. 25 infractions if pests were to show up on your job easily. Don't do this kind of thing. This guy down here in that trench, he's one cave-in away from not going home to his family at night. Make sure you're doing things as you should, right? You don't want to have to go to one of your employees' family and tell them what has happened. Emergencies. Things are going to happen. I'm not going to lie to you. It's devastating when it happens. We had two major flooding events in 8 days apart. Our soil and water guy said they're 500-year events, Marty. You can't plan for that. And after the second one, I said, well, Jerry, do you think we're good for 1,000 years? It's not the way it works. Make sure you know your role in the event of an emergency. Make sure you know who's responsible for what and where you can get help. I'm going to tell you, during our events, if it hadn't been for the help of my good friends in Chemung County and Matt Mustico and the superintendents in this county, we'd have been in trouble. At the end of the two emergencies, by the end of that year, I changed my 284 agreement. We amended it 7 times that year, and had the town back whole by fall, and didn't have to float a bond. We made a lot of changes as to what we were going to do, but the town was whole by fall again. But it wasn't without the help of a lot of my friends. Make sure you have 5G agreements in place, and make sure that if there is an event, that ends up with a declaration either by the state or the federal government that the people that help you can be reimbursed for their work. I teach running your highway departments. You know, all of the things we touched on today are part of that. If you haven't taken running your highway department, I encourage you to do it. Um, I will go over a lot of this stuff in much bigger detail. There's upcoming webinars. Worker safety is coming the 27th of January. The 3rd is culverts. The 10th is work zones. The 17th of February is traffic safety. The 24th is grants and federal aid. The 3rd of March is snow and ice overview. And the 10th is pavement maintenance. We also have spring workshops, rights and responsibilities. I teach that class. That's going to be taught throughout the state. Local roads done right, running your highway department, pavement maintenance, roadway and roadside design, and well-rounded roads. I want to thank you guys, everyone that took the time to spend this hour with me today for taking the time to get better at what you do. Remember, smart people are better, and I hope that maybe I might have maybe sparked some interest in things that can help you be better. And if I can, reach out to us, and we'll get you signed up for one of these upcoming workshops in the spring that'll help you be better. Remember, smart people are better, and I learn every day. And when you stop learning, then I don't even know what our purpose here is. So I want to thank you all for being here today, and be safe out there. Make sure you get through the rest of the winter without any incident. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Marty. Everybody have a great day.